So welcome, Eric, to the show this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a honor and privilege to be invited on the show.
Well, I'm excited to have you share some of what you're up to with our guests. And I want to start with one of the questions that you answered on the little show notes that I send out to guests is, what does it mean for you to live a life illuminated?
For me, I think it means remaining in the present moment, trying to be appreciative of what's in front of me, whether if it's my role as a father to in that moment to be as dedicated as a father as I could be. If it's a role as a husband, same, or work or whatever it may be, just um, throughout life, I've always like everyone has had moments where you reflect on your past, and sometimes it's good, bad, regrets, or whatever it may be. You have thoughts or concerns or hesitations about the future, and your mind can go a lot of different places, and it could, affect how you feel and your whole day, and even the energy goes to the people around you. So, for me, finding that more enlightened life has been just trying to remain grateful for anything that I have in my life that I could find gratefulness for, which is no matter what I'm going through in a bad day, I could always find many things to be grateful for, and just staying focused on the present moment for me is my best approach to it.
Yeah, and you mentioned too that one of the things that helped define that for you was some of the things that have brought adversity or sometimes in your life that haven't always been the greatest. Is there a particular defining moment that you can think of that you could share that actually shifted
Sure.
you?
There's so many. I could go into so many different directions on that one, honestly. From going through death at family members at a young age, and getting older in life and realizing that some people in their 40s hadn't experienced the amount of death that I had as a teenager. You know what I mean? Just of grandparents and friends and all kinds of different situations, and teaching me to like appreciate the value of life. So things like that pop up. But I mean, I think the most pronounced one that comes to my mind is when we decided as a family that I was going to, switch careers and open up my own martial arts school. It was a kind of a lifelong dream since I was a child. And I was working for my dad, who had a major sales company for 30 years, and he took me in, and the company was growing. But with internet sales, it kind of made that part of the industry start to die down. So he sold his business and got behind me and said, "Hey, let's pursue this as something that you've been wanting to do for a long time." And then my wife, at that same moment, we were having difficulty for a few years getting pregnant, had to go to a specialist. Long story short, we had to do IVF. So we were in the beginning of that process, found out that she was pregnant and that we were having twins. And I was opening up my business that exact same year. So it was, like, I guess at about 29 years old, realizing I'm going to be a father of twins, not knowing what they are at that moment, but also starting a new business, signing contracts, hiring, my family lending me money, having that pressure to accept that, even though they were 100% behind it, the pressure I put on myself to try to perform and make sure I was a success and I didn't fail or lose their money. And then starting that business and, doing something like that from the ground up with, my dad helping at the front desk. I didn't receive a paycheck for the first year and a half. I literally had a $0 W-2. We had my wife and I had to go to WIC and get food and things like that when the kids were born, because the girls were born, and 4 months later the business opened. So obviously they consumed a lot of our life, and expensive with diapers and things like that, and no money coming in. My wife was working. Obviously I was working, just trying to earn the money. So hard times like that most adverse moment of my life brings me back to that time when we were financially very, very down. And my brother showed up on my doorstep and rang the doorbell and had like, I get choked up. He had like 12 bags of groceries, so it's like,
Hmm.
sorry. So it just takes me back to that, you know, everyone really being so supportive of, and just taking so long to be a success. Thank God, here I am 12 years later, and the school's doing great. But going to the store and buying some groceries and taking $50, and someone wanted, like, I think my wife wanted like these like Kellogg Frosted Flakes with berries, I remember, and it was like $5, and I put it on the register and all the other essentials that we had to have. And the bill came up $5 like too high, and so I had to take the cereal off. So I remember like significantly in that moment, kind of feeling like, oh man, like I can't even afford a box of cereal. This kind of sucks. And turning it around and having visions where then using that as a motivation to continue to succeed and provide for the family. And 3 years later, had our girls in Jamaica on a family vacation, and it came full circle.
What do you think? That's such a powerful story. And I can, the way you described it, I can just picture the box of cereal. And that must have been very humbling, that moment of just, wow, I can't even do this. And what do you think was what you drew upon to bring about the strength to keep you going? Or what gave you the hope or the faith that you would get through this, or was there none?
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely those tough moments because you're also exhausted. I mean, the girls were I have twin girls, so they were 4 and 5 pounds when they were born. So they had to eat every hour and a half. So we were up constantly and had like very little sleep. So between working all the time and, being financially stressed, and then the emotional stuff and the physical stuff that comes from the lack of sleep was tough. But also one of the greatest moments for us to sit together as a family, my wife and I, to be like, look what we have. Like we weren't able to have kids. We were struggling, and here are 2 beautiful twin girls right in front of us. And we have a house, and we have food, and we have each other. And it was like, let's strip down everything that most people think is important and really just throw in your face. This is all you guys need. Like, yes, money would ease some of the stress and pain, but what you have right now, we felt wealthy. So I think like my wife and I have a really good job of bouncing off of each other and bringing out or uplifting when one's down and one not, or helping to bring perspective through discussion. And, I think keeping our focus on that and not what we didn't have, because every time we focus on what we didn't have, like, sleep, money, things like that, it was painful to think that way. So you just appreciate what you do have in those moments of holding your babies and being together. And that provided the hope and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to work every day. It was a lifelong dream since I was a child. I should consider myself blessed that I have an opportunity to do it. So the hope remained with the family support. Because I think if you're by yourself, that's tough. But when you have a good village around you, it helps. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And boy, your story points to, there's so many directions I could take this. And I think, and it's a beautiful story because it reminds me of just, like you said earlier, just finding the gratitude. And for you, it's not just finding the gratitude in, the big stuff. It's finding the gratitude in just, can I afford the diaper?
Mm-hmm.
Can I afford the food? Right?
100%.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we think that the happiness comes from somewhere out there, that if we could just get that particular job or that particular car, if we had those letters behind our name, we would be much happier and more fulfilled. And it sounds like you got to a place where you just reached that place just inside of your own cocoon of your family and your family unit. And it sounds also like you have just an amazing support system.
Yeah, it's again, it's those moments that you have to, you have, I think you have 2 different approaches. You look at life and you say, all right, here's what I'm going through. This was like, I shared a little bit of a small part of my story right there. If I focus on that moment, there's 2 ways to look at it. One way is look at all the stuff I'm stressed out about: money, sleep, work, and there could be all these things. Nothing really changes. Those are truths and those are realities. Because sometimes you say to people, well, remain positive, blah, blah, blah. And people say, oh, you live in a fairy tale. I have to deal in the world of reality. And hey, these are all truths. So yes, these things exist. So I have 2 options. I go through life with all of these things existing, and I am stressed, and I'm in pain, I'm in depressed, I'm in doubt, I'm hopeless. Is option one. Option two is I'm still going through all these same truths, but it's something that I am going to go through right now, and I have to take a lesson out of it. And if I can get through it and remain grateful for the things that I do have in my life that I have control over and I'm happy for, I could focus on it, still go through the same truths on the side, but approach it in a a healthier, better way where it feels better to go through. Nothing changes the reality of what you're going through, but how would you like to feel going through these things? I prefer option two, because option one, when you do get sucked into that way of thinking, it doesn't feel good. It lingers, and no one likes that. So I prefer to try the other path and focus on the good things, even though I could also acknowledge that these realities. Nothing takes away from that, but I'm going to remain positive and grateful for all these things in my life that I do have that I'm happy for.
Yeah, and don't you think too that one of the things you said was the things I have control over, that a lot of times we think that we're in charge of all of it. And if I just control the environment, it'll all work out. And I think in some cases, it's best to just let go and let it unfold, right? Do the things you need to do, right? The things that need doing that you're responsible for on a day-to-day, not like you can just float through life, but to be mired down in the things that we can't control isn't all that productive.
Yeah. If you focus on, listen, another, I think it's a Tony Robbins quote, and it's like, when you're going through a challenge in life, you either can accept it or you could change it. If you can't change what you're going through, you have to accept it. And if you can't accept it, then make a change. It's one or the other. So sometimes if you could break it down that simply, and I'm like, hey, there's limited, whatever. I'm tired. I'm poor at the moment. I'm working tons of hours. We're exhausted. I got the kids in the morning. She's got them at night. We're barely seeing each other. We don't know what day it is. We're changing literally 150 diapers a week. You know what I mean? It's overwhelming, but I can't control all these things. So let's take a step back and breathe. And like, hey, you're in front of me, because I remember someone that just passed away, a friend of ours that, may have just had a heart attack in 40s, and you lose a family member like that, or someone dies in a car accident, or someone gets cancer. And you go, if I had one more day to spend with this person, how valuable would that be? And here I am in front of someone and children that I absolutely love and adore. And I'm going to be so negative and so stressed out about these surrounding events in my life that I'm not going to allow myself to appreciate what's right in front of me. If you just, I think, shift your mind a little bit when you're going through those things and keep your focus in the right spots, it helps you to stay hopeful in it. Because if you can't control something, you're just going to drive yourself nuts. There's no way around it,
Of course. And also too, I think as parents, we have to be reminded that the energy we bring to the party isn't just here. It isn't just around us. It goes all around us to them. And they pick up on it, whether they vocalize it or really understand tangibly what that means, doesn't matter, because they pick it up. I remember a time when I was, truly, I thought I was at the edge of just sanity, really. And I just remember the behavior that I had, the anger and the short-temperedness and the impatience and just living in this state of hyperventilation. And I remember physically, that was that defining moment for me of like, you just can't keep doing this. You have two little kids who are watching and emulating and absorbing everything you're doing and everything you're saying. And is that the kind of mom you really want to be? And that was the defining moment for me. Was there a defining moment for you? Was it the cornflakes?
Yeah, listen, there's as I've mentioned, there's been many defining moments, throughout my life. I lost one of my best friends when he was 19 years old. I go back to death with family and friends, because I feel like in those moments when you are at, your mourning at a funeral, wherever, and everyone is, sharing stories, often you see friends and family you haven't seen for years, and everyone's like, oh man, it's so horrible that it took something like this to bring us all together. And I remember often in those moments being like, man, if I could just keep this mindset and feeling on an ongoing basis, how easy life would be. Because like all the crap that gets thrown at you on a daily basis would just bounce off, because you're like, wait a second, like you're alive and I'm healthy. I'm good. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's so simple. It's like, even when you're like significant moments, I could break it down so simply. Like I just recovered. I'm still recovering from an ACL and meniscus surgery from this past July. So I'll give you an example like that. I'm obviously an active martial artist, going from being someone super physical to someone that was limited to doing nothing and just standing. To get on crutches to go to the bathroom, my leg would swell and I would be in agonizing pain, for, a couple weeks at a time, and going through rehab, blah, 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 blah. It's in those moments you're like, man, I wish I could just stand up and go to the bathroom, not be in pain. Or I wish I could walk, or I wish I could jump or do a jumping jack right now. And it's like moments like that you're just so appreciative that when you start to get your health back, you're like, that's amazing. And then I stop to think in those moments, those little moments, it's like, man, you have something to be grateful for every day. If you could see, hear, eat, go to the bathroom, get through your daily life without tremendous pain, then you're blessed. And I think all these different circumstances and a million stories I can give you in life just break down to that simple thing of just remaining so grateful for the things that we just take for granted every day, and unfortunately allow nonsense to come in and push our buttons and invade that space,
But don't you think, I mean, obviously looking back at your life, that these are defining moments, whether it's the friend who passed away really early or family members or anything that like you've shared. Don't you think those moments, or even the big adversity, is exactly what we all need to teach us to be grateful? Because intellectually we know I should be appreciative, I should be grateful, I have a roof over my head, all of that. We all know that in our intellectual selves. But to be able to truly feel it the way you described, like to just be able to walk to the bathroom, would be a really big plus today. Sometimes we need that adversity to wake us up.
I think you do. I think that, and it comes from a good heart. We try to protect people and support them, sometimes often too much, where people are getting coddled. And you're seeing, even obviously I teach children from 3 and up. So I've the psychology of children over the last 20 some odd years of teaching from, teens and up. You see all these different ways that you could approach. And when they are overly coddled and don't face adversity, they don't know how to cope. They don't know how to deal in life. It's, the journey through martial arts, to use it as an example, because it's what I could relate to, obviously the best. It's a showing up every day. It's, knowing you're tired and everything going in your life and saying, I'm still going to go and spend an hour or two of my life dedicating myself to something that, sometimes hurts and sometimes uncomfortable. And, martial arts teaches you that you're either stronger than you thought you were, or you're not as strong as you thought you were, because it constantly humbles you. No matter how good you are, there's always people that are better than you. And when you're in those down and out tough situations, when you're training with one another and you have to dig deep and pull through, it to me reflects to the same lessons of life that you're bringing up, that adversity, although painful at the time, if you again change your shift and say, well, what is the lesson I'm supposed to be learning from this? What can I have to go through this regardless, so I can go through it and be miserable, or I can go through it and be like, well, there's something I should probably learn or take from this. So what's my lesson here? So it's like, what's the question I'm going to ask myself? Like, why me? All right, well, you get one answer. Or what's my lesson here? I get another answer. So I'm a firm believer that I don't think many of us would want to live a nerfed life existence, because you cannot appreciate the sunrise without, experiencing a storm. You know what I mean? You would take it for granted.
Yeah, there's Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Vietnamese monk. I love one of the stories he tells, and it's about, you have to experience the toothache to know what it's like not to have one. Right? And
absolutely.
It's profound in its simplicity, but it's so, I love that. So take me back a little bit. You mentioned that martial arts has been a lifelong dream since you were really young. What got you into martial arts? What inspired that?
Sure. I mean, well, I had an older brother, and my dad loved to, play and do things together. And he ended up signing us up together as a family, the three of us, and we ended up training in one art for a couple of years. And then he ended up having an accident and breaking his leg, and he wasn't able to drive us for almost a year. So we just had to like train at home and hit the bag. But we just would train. We would watch ninja movies. This is like the 80s, so like the Karate Kid and Ninja Turtles and all the Power Ranger, all these different things are out. And so my brother and I, of course, think we're ninjas, and dressing up and like ninjas and with swords in the house and being boys. But my brother is went on to become actually a very famous, world-renowned artist. I chose to continue the martial art path, and ended up befriending someone that was a brown belt at a different school. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come on over? You were I think it was a green or a purple belt in this other style." And I started at the new school. Long story short, that's where I ended up staying through receiving 4th-degree black belt master, and started teaching there, and so on. But to rewind and give you a little more specifics, it's somewhere in my teens, realizing that it was something that I could really attach to, because my previous experience was team sports like Little League, and things like that most of my friends were into. I didn't like, because when I did well, like, everyone loved you and all your friends were proud of you. When you made a mistake, everyone would blame you and say that it's your fault that you lost the game. And I didn't really like that. I like being my best friend or my worst critic. I like challenging myself and going, you know what, if I'm going to succeed, it's because I put the work in. If I fail, it's because I failed. And I just have to I'm only accountable to me, not to everyone else around me. And I think that's what drew me into martial arts, is although you have the camaraderie of working with groups and teams, ultimately it breaks down to you as an individual trying to find your best. I love the philosophy and the character and the positive psychology and environment that it brings, how uplifting and confident, and how it teaches you to work with different types of personalities you may never have met before. And then also finding out early on that I started to recognize I was good at it when people are starting to compliment you, and you're receiving awards. Or I remember a significant story that, like, sparring, when you practice fighting each other, some weeks they would have black belts in a lineup, and the class would have to go one by one and go down the line of black belts and like spar and fight the black belts. And I remember I got up to around the blue belt level, which is about the intermediate level, so I was like still a young teen at this time. And they actually, I was doing so well, they pulled me out of the class and put me in line next to them at a blue belt level. So it was like these different moments, and then going to tournaments, or people acknowledging, moving up in ranks, that I started to be like, well, I started to recognize, like, this is something I'm good at. Like, there's not many things I'm great at, but like, wait a second, I'm good at this. So let me, as opposed to being okay at a bunch of things, I decided that, like, early on, like, this is something that I'm going to just never give up on, and make a life study, because I want to master this. You know what I mean? And I still am, and still learning, and still taking classes.
What do you think that the most powerful thing is that it teaches you?
I would one thing, empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't just say that in a physical stance of like a cocky walking around like I could beat up everybody. It's not that. It's through all these other little things I could break off and tell you about, if I just keep it simple and say that it shows you your absolute weakest side of yourself and your strongest side of yourself. And it constantly pushes you to want to consistently grow and succeed, and understand that failure is not something to avoid, but is something that should be welcomed. And that you should constantly surround yourself by people that are better than you. And that ultimately it's the overall empowerment that it gives you of working hard towards something, and then seeing the fruits of your labor come to fruition, and then realizing that it is also teaching you that there is literally no end. There's no deadline of, okay, now I know it all. It's a lifelong study that consistently makes you feel better about yourself. And I think then therefore projects other aspects of your life, of the confidence of not even knowing that you could fight and defend yourself, but knowing that you don't even need that. You don't have no no ego to prove out there unless you're absolutely forced to, because you're testing it so often in a controlled environment. So empowerment would, if I had to break it down to one thing.
Well, I just think it's certainly not one thing, right? It's the whole picture, because what you described is a journey through life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Constantly seek the person that's better than me so that I can continue to rise up. And I think and earlier you mentioned that part of your success through the difficult times was the people you had around you that were supporting you, and that you really realized you couldn't do it alone. I think, I don't know for sure, but it sounds to me like your lifelong journey inside of this particular passion of yours has taught you everything about how to handle these adversities and how to approach it. And I love that earlier you mentioned humbling too.
Mm-hmm.
That doing what you do and being a teacher of what you do, I think, is the most valuable thing of all, because it's one thing for us to learn something. It's another thing to teach it, right? To give it away,
Mm-hmm.
to give it away.
Sure. Well, I think that there's those two sides of me. There's Eric, the martial arts student, which is, why I decided to, after, 20 some odd years of being a black belt, to try to earn a second black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and throw a white belt back on 7 years ago. And, I'm a purple belt now and still have a long way to go. There's that guy who fell in love with it. And then the other half of what martial arts has done for me, and also early on, because I began teaching at 18 years old, is seeing the impact that you could have on people. Not only children, which I've always been great and around. I love kids. I love, getting down on their level and hanging out. I've always been that way my whole life. So it helps as a teacher. But not only seeing the growth and the confidence and how children could change, you watch them grow. But at 18 years old, I was also teaching adult classes of people that were twice my age. And at first they would be like, well, you're young. What do you have to teach me? So I had to prove myself through my ability as a teacher and also my skill set for them to be able to earn the respect to say, hey, wait a second, this guy, look what he knows. Look how he's moving. Look at the details that he has. And I can't even move my right arm and left arm this way. Okay. This is someone I can learn from. So learning that I could bridge a gap between kids and go from that to teaching teens to adults and mixing between and learning all these different methods of psychology, of relating information. Because I can't, it's not a script I could read. You literally have to continually read the group in the class. And if there's 20 people, then 6 are getting it and the rest can't get it. I have to continually try to rework my brain and figure out how to explain things. So as a teacher, being able to give that out and for people to relay back to you over years, from children to adults now, how it's impacted their life. And then also we're huge in community service. So, leading in the community and doing a lot of donations in town. It just overall, that ability to give back and lead by example, just like being a parent to your children, it's just it's a really amazing feeling if you have that opportunity.
Well, it just sounds like a beautiful way to live your life. I mean, in the learning, but in the service, and in being able to step back and watch people grow and shift and change because you contributed so powerfully to their lives. Mm-hmm. I think very few people out there are doing a job that they jump out of bed to do that really lights them up and gives them a sense of true life purpose and passion, and keeps their passion alive. And it sounds like you have found a way to marry your passion and your love with what you already love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, it's also work. Do you know what I mean? So your ego does come back in and you're like, oh, I have to, because it's not just running, if it was just teaching classes, that'd be fabulous. But it's also marketing and buying supplies and opening boxes and cleaning and advertising and, payrolls and, all the things that come with running any full business. There's some people that have the misconception of like, oh, so when do you get here? Like 4:30 and classes start at 5. I'm like, no, I'm usually here at like, 10 in the morning or 12 in the afternoon. Well, what do you do for a full-time job? This is a full-time job. There's a full business to run. You can't just unlock the door, bow in, turn the lights on, teach class, mop up and leave, So when you have the moments of like the work part of what I do, I have to keep myself in check still. It's not like it goes away. It's an ongoing practice and muscle that you have to work to go, hey, idiot, stop getting caught up in your day, because you go out and you teach a class and you have this amazing experience. The kids run up to you and hug you, and parents tell you what how great their kids are doing in school. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's why I do this. And you get these constant smacks across the face of like, let's stay in the present moment, dude, but again, it's like, if anyone's hearing this and thinking it's like, I have mastered this. No, I make the mistake, and I'm trying to get better at recognizing it faster and keeping myself in check faster. But just like all of us, I have those days sometimes you're like, oh man, I'm in a rut, need to get out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And so who can you think of somebody who has been one of your biggest role models in your life or inspired you in some way?
In life in general or in martial arts?
Either.
Oh, okay. Again, could go either way on that one. So I'd say I would have to keep it as close as possible. If I have to pick one thing, it would be my family, my brother, Jay, who's 4 years older than me, and my dad and my mom, and the fact that they taught me to have the certain type of work ethic that I have. They taught me how to appreciate. We had a nice life growing up, but we never were raised to be entitled. So like the ability, support, and strength of the people in my life that were closest to me that helped shape me to become a man and teach me about life, and to have that older brother to consistently still go to for advice, and a dad, and that I had, my dad co-owns the business with me, so I work with him every single day at the desk. So being able to constantly bounce life off of each other and share that experience. So, I mean, I could choose other people, but if I narrowed it down to the most important, it would be my family, and specifically my father, Paul, and my brother, Jay.
Yeah. And well, tell me about someone else who might be one of your biggest influences. Doesn't have to be just the one.
Sure. Well, listen, obviously, I can't not mention my wife, Tiffany, because we've been together since she was 19. I was 21. So, I mean, what she has also taught me is how to always recognize different viewpoints and situations, and to help also shape me to look at things better, to learn how to communicate better, to raise women, to learn how to communicate, and to understand the psychology of girls, so that I could raise them up to not only be confident, independent, but to have an open relationship where they could feel confident to share with me. So I have to respect the role model as a friend, as a spouse, and as a partner, as a parent, to help me become the best I can in that part of my life. And on like a friendship side, my friend that passed away was a huge influence, for me to continue opening up the martial arts school. It was like a mutual dream of ours. And then I have, several instructors, my jiu-jitsu instructors, over the last few years, have been a huge influence on me in reinvigorating, my love to train again, because you teach for so long, you get caught up in it. So I have one of the most legends in martial arts, and in MMA, this guy Ricardo Laborio, that I had an opportunity to train with for many years. Another world champion, female, phenomenal, Professor Emily Kwok, and her partner Art Kynes, and her husband Jerry Hurtado I trained under. And for the last 3 years, I'm with my new coach, Professor Bill Scott and Professor Jason Malley. Are, again, it's that, go back to the word humble. On one level of my life, I'm a 6th degree black belt master, the head of this school. On another level, I had to put a white belt back on. I'm a purple belt now, and I still have a long way to go. And you could go and train with people that can absolutely demolish you everywhere, day in and day out. They call it tapping when you're getting choked or arm locked or whatever it may be. You're getting tapped out multiple times a day. And to have new role models in life that take me back to the feeling I had as a child when you look up to your instructor as like a second father, or a mentor, to have that again and reinvigorate my love as a student of martial arts, not just a teacher, has also in turn made me a more passionate, excited, and motivated instructor. So I have to mention them and a big influence on my life as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think like you've mentioned several times already, life is a continuous journey. There's no end point. There's no place to get to.
Absolutely.
We're not here to get somewhere. And I think that's an issue for many of us in life, is we think we're supposed to do it all, have it all, be it all. We live under this assumption that who we are is the roles that we play, or the positions or possessions. And it's not that at all. It just isn't. And I love that you brought your wife and what she teaches you about raising women into it too, because it is a totally different animal to raise one sex or the other. As a single mother of two kids, I have one of each, and it's totally different from my daughter to my son. Totally different. And it's really great that you have such a wonderful relationship and partnership with your wife to help you grow and raise these beautiful young women in your world. Do you have suggestions for anybody out there listening that might help them move to this place of just living a life that they envision, that inspires them and lights them up?
Yeah, I think the advice is that if you feel like you have some sort of positive change you want to make in your life, that you could either have results or you could have excuses. You can't have both. So you have to take some kind of action. I think that people know where their heart is guiding them, even if they feel trapped and they feel like there's no escape. Deep down, that's not true. You can make life changes no matter where you are in your life, and pursue something that would, bring you more positivity and happiness and gratefulness in your life. And if you just stay focused on maybe one task at a time and say, okay, what's one thing I could do today? Don't think about, well, I have to do this. And you start running down the list of all the things you have to do and why it won't work. You have to shut down the clutter of all those thoughts, take yourself into the present moment, take a breath, and be like, what's one thing I could do today? And then that's it. And what's something I could do tomorrow? And even though if that seems like that'll take forever, if you're doing nothing, you're standing still. So you take one step at a time, you're inching your way closer. I don't care if you get there in a month or in a year or whatever it may be. At least you're going to go after something that you love and you have a passion for. And whenever you're in doubt and you're feeling like there's no hope, I think you just have to take it again, a deep breath, bring yourself back to the present moment, and just try to focus on all the things that you have to be grateful for in your life. And know that if you stay after it and you don't give up and you keep grinding, because that's life. You can't just smile and hope it's all going to just fall around you, with rainbows. You gotta grind. You got to get out there. You got to work. You got to push past. You could have your moments to mourn and be upset, and then you got to shake it off, and you got to get up and you got to push through. And yes, you could have the support of family and friends, and that's awesome if you have it, but you ultimately have to make the change from within. And the moment that you decide to make a change, it doesn't take 3 years, it doesn't take a month to make a decision to change your life. It happens in one moment. You make that decision, you start a new trend going forward, and you just take control of your life, and success will come your way eventually, in whatever form that means to you, whether it's financial or emotional, spiritual, or whatever it may be.
I love that, because I think that since we're living in such a Google life, some people, I teach meditation and I'm a life coach, and some people come to me and they're like, just tell me what I need to do to become a lifetime meditator and in this hour, right? And you can't Google peace. You can't Google serenity. You can't Google humility. You can't Google success. You have to live it and spend the time to settle in, like get tapped out and stand back up again, right? Over and over and over again. And I love that. So how can people get a hold of you, or where can we find more you, Eric?
Sure. I mean, well, easily, like a lot of my personal profile would be Eric Alders. So, Eric with a C, Alders. You often use my middle initial G. So like on Instagram and in Twitter would be Eric G. Alders. I'm on Facebook. My martial arts school, the Karate Dojo, MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is also available on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then hosting Life's Black Belts, same thing, at Life's Black Belts would be on all the different branches of social media. So people can feel free to email me, lifesblackbelts@gmail.com. Otherwise, you could find me all over the internet. My martial arts school has a website. So if you ever happen to be in New Jersey and you want to come visit or take some free classes, feel free to go to the website and check us out.
Awesome. And so do you have any parting words for anybody out there who's trying to live a life illuminated?
I think you just take a moment and look at where you are in life, whether you look around the room that you're in or the car you're in, or you have a moment to look in the mirror and just have a very honest conversation with yourself, and don't make any more excuses. Just do a clear analysis as if you're looking at a friend and what they're going through. See what you're grateful for in your life and see some of the things that you would maybe like to make a change in your life, and maybe choose one at a time and stay focused on just trying to remain thankful and grateful for everything that's going on in your life, no matter how simple it may be. Don't always go after the next big thing, because the happiness isn't ahead of you. It's right in front of you. And when you could finally live in the present moment and try to, quickly mourn these, rough patches of life and get back to remaining grateful of what you have to be thankful for, I think the approach to life that will still be challenging will be a lot easier to navigate.
Awesome. I love that. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend a little time with you this morning, Eric, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Maggie. I really appreciate having me on and asking all those great questions and sharing a little bit of my story.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're ever in California, come visit us over here at our meditation center in San Diego.
I would love to. It's freezing in New Jersey right now, so I would much rather be in San Diego.
Well, I got a guest house, so bring it on.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.